Hey everyone, this morning we are in for a treat. Today we get to talk to Lisa Nirell, the founder of Energized Growth LLC. She helps CMOs and CEOs accelerate marketing, innovation, and growth. Those innovative companies such as Google, Adobe, Turner, and Hilton hire Lisa to formulate new strategies and launch breakthrough marketing ideas. She's the award-winning author of not one, but two books, the latest being The Mindful Marketer, How to Stay Present and Profitable in a Data-Driven World. She contributes to, now get this, CMO.com, Fast Company, Forbes CMO, and Huffington Post. Lisa draws her innovation and inspiration from open water swimming, meditation, and adventure travel with her husband, Magnus. So she's got some cool stuff at lisanirell.com, and we're going to talk about a bunch of that, all about mindfulness. But she tells me, she sends me this email, she says she's laconic. And I had to, of course, look that up because I'm like, wow, that's only one word. What the heck is that? And it means you're short on the words. And of course, that makes me loquacious, which means I'm long on the words. So this is going to be fun. What's up, Lisa?
Good morning, Phil.
You totally made me laugh when you sent that. And I'm like, oh my goodness, somebody's short. So we're going to have the shortest interview. No, we're not. But I just thought that was cute that you told me that, because I've of course seen the word, right? It's not like I have a second grade education, but I thought that was funny that you would send that one word instead of saying, I'm going to be really brief and short and crisp and to the point. You just send one word that says it all. So that was cute. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So marketing, right? So first, I think it's important that we define what marketing is, because a lot of people, there's a lot of misconceptions out there about marketing. So tell me, how does Lisa Nirell define marketing?
First, I want to thank you for having me on your show. This is quite a treat.
Sure.
Quite a treat. I get to sip my cappuccino and talk to you and talk about my favorite topics. This is good. We define marketing as the ability to influence, educate, and inspire others to take action.
That's pretty simple. Wow. So just three little things there. So marketing's not storytelling, and it's not convincing people to buy, and it's not, subliminal messages to drip in their brain.
Well, there's always the opportunity to use those methods or techniques, and it's up to marketing leaders, which are my communities, to determine how they, notice I use the word influence. So how you influence is your choice. And, if it's through inspiration, if it's through, addressing the reptilian brain and creating doubt or fear of being left out, or, there are multiple motivations that help people take action. But it's very interesting, Phil, as you look at what works in the world of marketing, and I've now written 500 or 600 articles. I've lost track. I've written a couple books, and I'm writing all the time. For me, it's very cathartic. And what I have found is that readership increases when the headline is positive and you're trying to help people move forward in a positive way. When your topics are all negative, or you're trash talking the president or something like that, the quality of engagement and readership is actually not what you would expect. So being the provocateur that I am, I thought I would just mention that.
That's really interesting, because, you hear so much, at least I do, about in marketing, about people who say that, we have to make people feel pain, and then we have to be the salve for that pain. Is that not the case? I mean, when we write a headline and we call them out on their pain, isn't that what we're supposed to do?
There is just a study out of Harvard that really surprised me, and I'll have to dig that out for you, about how more aspirational headlines work very well. And the other thing you have to ask yourself, if you're listening to this conversation, is what kind of clients do I love to work with? Do I love to be a search and rescue advisor or business? Or do I work with highly successful organizations and people, and help them get even better? So, once you understand that and the behavioral dynamics of the people that you're drawn to, then you can answer that question much more succinctly or laconically.
There you go. Yeah. Well, that's interesting, and I do look forward to reading that study. But that second part that you said, I think, is often the most important part and the most often misunderstood, and that is if we figure out who we want to serve, what their characteristics are first, right? Because a lot of times we don't personify those people first. We don't put them in a persona. We just go to the marketplace and we show up, and then those people that talk to us are the people that we end up doing business with, and then we end up adapting to them. So are you saying that we should be more intentional about the way that we market?
Mindful marketers are intentional. I wasn't a mindful marketer 15 years ago, I have to tell you. I had a keynote speech in Las Vegas to a room full of industrial people who owned industrial businesses, like dry cleaners and large facilities that served corporations, hotels, and so forth. And I remember so vividly asking them the question, tell me, who is your perfect customer? And it got really quiet in the room. And finally, a man raises his hand way in the back. And he said, anybody with a check.
Yeah.
And I thought, that was such a turning point for me. Because I said, that's not how I choose to build my business, is if somebody has a check, I'm going to work with them. Or if someone has a budget. So that's when I started to go down this path of saying, okay, what does it really mean to have the perfect client? And how can we only work with those people? And setting our intentions are important. The other thing, I'm not sure if you've heard about this, Phil, but one of our best clients has a saying, and he says, demographics are dead, long live mindsets. And this is a shift we're also seeing among what I call mindful marketers. Is they're saying, okay, let's get rid of this ageism around, whether you work with baby boomers versus millennials. Let's stop putting people in boxes based on age, income, and geographics and geographic location. What if we look at working with people who have certain mindsets, passions, lifestyle preferences, and so forth? And if you look at some of the real cutting edge initiatives underway at companies like Coca-Cola and Hilton and others, that's how they're designing their new products and properties.
So let's talk more about that, right? Because demographics is fairly easy to understand, right? We're looking at the 25 to 35, the 35 to 45, the 45 to 60, and then 60 up, or whatever the numbers are, right? So you can draw those lines wherever the heck you want, generationally or numbers or whatever. But that's not what you're saying. You're saying to instead talk about mindset. So tell me about a customer mindset that we can talk to.
So when you ask we, who's we?
So right now, just you and I, if we're going to go to market, talking to some C-suite folks, what's a mindset that we can, because we see there are CEOs that are young, there are CEOs that are older, right? So let's pick any mindset that you want to talk to, and let's, define it and talk a little bit about how we might approach them.
So one of the things I avoid ever doing are hypotheticals, because they're not as useful. So what I can do is best illustrate through my own business.
Perfect.
So it's more pragmatic. And what I've done is I've found that now that we've built these communities of chief marketing officers in the mid-Atlantic states, as well as in the southeastern U.S. in Atlanta, which is through our marketing leaders of Atlanta and marketing leaders of DC.com. What we have found is that there is a certain predilection among our members to be lifelong learners. And I'm noticing they all have individual passions outside of work, including they're voracious readers. They're actively engaged in their communities in some way, whether those are, their spiritual communities or their sports communities or what have you. and another is a propensity to be helpful to others, which is very different from a candidate who applied to join our CMO peer group, who approached me and said, well, I appreciate you're inviting me to a breakfast to get to meet some of your members, but I can't make it. And I said, oh, okay. Is that a bad day for you? And he said, no, I can only go to meetings where I'm the lead speaker. So that was also an aha moment, much like the man in the back of the room, people with checks. This gentleman really woke me up, because what he was saying is, and helping me understand, is that prima donnas need not apply. So if you're a prima donna and you think it's all about you, you'll probably not be an optimal client for me, nor a person who is going to be a great contributor to a peer group. Wow. Is that helpful, or is that too detailed?
Yeah. No, I think that's good. And I think that's very interesting, because when you were first discussing those mindsets, I was thinking, do we have a fixed mindset, or do we have, a flexible mindset, right? Do we expect that things are going to go one way, or are we more flexible and we will look for solutions, right? Are we more negative or more positive? So I think that is helpful, because that's definitely a great characteristic, the whole lifelong learning thing, and then not only learning, but the willingness to contribute to others is a mindset that is very different. And for me, as a social seller, as someone who teaches that's a really key mindset for me to hone in on, because the lone wolf salesperson is likely not going to do a great job of embracing social selling, because they need to embrace the community and recognize that they're not the only voice that has authority. So I think that's interesting that you would give that example, and especially as a marketer, because I don't know, maybe it's just I've been fortunate in my experience, but I've not heard a lot of marketers who have said that they're not collaborative, that they're unwilling to learn. And so, again, maybe I'm just lucky, or maybe it's my bright orange shirt that scares them away, but something.
Or your bright white glasses, which I thought had a neon light in them. They're very interesting. They're very fun.
Thank you.
Yeah. I wish everyone could see them right now. They're very stylish.
Thank you. Thanks. So that's really interesting. So how you said that hand raise, that was maybe the seminal moment, but how did this continue to get reinforced? I mean, was that just a light bulb that went off and then it never turned out, or did you bump into other folks that were like-minded as you, or how did this whole mindful marketing come about for you, Lisa?
Well, I owe a debt of gratitude to one of my mentors. I have had several over the last 16 years of running my business. One of my muses is Mark Levy, who runs a company called Levy Innovation. And he helped me codify the mindful marketer and create the book proposal and talk to the folks who were the division of Macmillan Publishing that ultimately took me on. And it was just great. It was really a synthesis of my identity with my business and these unmet market needs that were out there. And I really believed, and I still believe, 2 years after the book was launched, that isolation is the bane of modern society. And the more technical we become, the more we replace, the more machine learning and AI replace humans, the more we see people buying and checking you out on the web long before they're willing to even talk to you on the phone, the more isolated people have become. So how can mindfulness, this was my journey of how can mindfulness, the 18 years I've invested in mindfulness practices and honing my own craft of self-discovery, how might that help other people, especially CMOs who feel so isolated in their jobs? And when I realized that principles of mindfulness could be helpful, the book just came to life very quickly.
That's cool. So talk to us about some of those principles. Are they daily principles, weekly? Are they just lifestyle? Talk to me a little bit about what that means.
Well, I have found that mindfulness, first of all, it's very, very quickly defined as non-judgmental present moment awareness. So being able to identify what's happening right now, either intellectually or at some physical level without judgment, and accepting the world as it is right now without trying to fix or change things that are way outside of your control. And that is an antidote to human suffering. I happen to live in one of the human suffering capitals of the world, Washington, D.C. It's a real life house of cards right now. And so the need for mindful practices as a way to accept what is and evade human suffering is more important than ever. So when I work with people, I say, look, once you know what mindfulness is, if you choose to go down that path and have some kind of mindfulness practice, you have a plethora of options. A lot of people think, oh my gosh, it's a cult. I have to start wearing orange robes. Well, you're already wearing an orange shirt, but it is not a religion. It is a way of thinking. It is a way of neurologically changing how your brain neurons are firing so that you are calmer, more decisive, and more focused. Who doesn't want that?
Yeah,
who doesn't want that?
Yeah, those sound like pretty important things. So take us through that. I mean, you said there's a plethora of options, but let's talk to a beginner like me. A beginner, like maybe a early on CMO or C-suite person who is like, this mindfulness, I think it's good. I like those outcomes, Lisa, but how do I get started? How do I start being more mindful?
Well, first we have to look at what mindfulness could include or involve. Some people do practice mindfulness through the traditional norm of meditation, which really got introduced to Western society through the mindfulness-based stress reduction programs with John Kabat-Zinn at the University of Massachusetts Medical Center. So that was one path. But things have really expanded here in Western society. We have all kinds of ways to find mindful practices today. Some people practice walking in nature without their phones attached to their hip. I mean, being unplugged and just walking in nature and being present to the beauty of nature. Other people practice it through qigong, yoga, chanting, singing, needlepoint. I mean, and things that don't involve technology or multitasking. And so it's really up to people to determine what method works for me and my style. And that's what I love about mindfulness, is you get to determine. And the other path to mindfulness that people could consider is to find what we call a sangha, which is a Pali word for community. Find a community of like-minded people who believe in the power of mindfulness and find time to sit with them or practice yoga or chant or take 10 minutes to meditate, whatever the case may be. Again, that's the joy of mindfulness. You can tell I'm not trying to promote mindfulness. People have to find the path that works for them. And as Joan Baez once said in her famous song, take what you need and leave the rest.
That's good. I like that. That's doable, which I think is probably the most exciting piece of that, is that something you can actually do. A lot of people, they're not going to take 3 hours to spend, doing something. So 10 minutes though, is 10 minutes really enough?
Here's the fun part, Phil. With mindfulness practices, you're not trying to get anywhere. And guess what? There's no performance benchmark. So you don't have to compare yourself to, that's the joy of mindfulness, is it's not about comparing yourself to other people. It's not being a better meditator than your neighbor. There's no point system. It's not like sales. There's no scoreboard. They don't care how many Facebook or LinkedIn followers you have. It doesn't matter. It's what works for Phil. What works for you? I started with 5 minutes of meditation many years ago, and it was excruciating. It was just excruciating because my monkey mind kept getting involved, and I have this perpetual to-do list in my head. Do you know people like that? It's just like, I got to do stuff. Yeah. I have to be valuable, I must be busy. And that's another funny belief that it's one that I have to laugh at all the time about myself. So there's really no place to get. It's how can I start and see where it goes, and maybe build a structure around me with other friends, with mindful friends to help me stay on course. There's even a new teleseminar group called telesanga.com where you can join in, once a day in the morning and meditate over Skype or over the phone. So you can join other people, and there are myriad ways you can get involved and build a mindfulness practice.
Wow, that's awesome. I think the lack of competition and the lack of a scoreboard is really a powerful thing, because I can tell you, I'm looking at the scoreboard a lot of the day and thinking about, okay, so what do the numbers look like? What do they mean? What am I going after? What am I chasing? And the ability to not have that, I think is really powerful and pretty freeing. But also, that also makes it tough. Like, how do I know if I'm doing it right, Lisa?
Isn't that funny when you ask yourself that? That's the joy of mindfulness, is it's just, even when I hear those questions, it just makes me laugh inside. And I'm not laughing at you, I'm really laughing with you, because I've gone through the same thing. I remember when I started meditating with Greg in San Diego, when my husband and I lived there, and I would go to these Saturday morning we call them sits, Saturday morning sits. And some of them were 4 hours long, and we'd have breaks. And oh my gosh, the first one was just pain and agony. And that is a classic question that goes through your mind. A limiting belief or some kind of saboteur in your brain saying, it's like this noisy 5-year-old that just ate a whole bag of M&Ms, right? Phil, are you doing it right? Shouldn't you be doing something else? You better check your phone. There could be something happening that you're missing, or you're not good enough. I mean, it's hilarious, all these 5-year-old voices in our heads that will find a way to distract us. And it's just, again, the hilarity of the human condition.
Wow, that's really fun stuff. So give us one more or two more really good insights from the mindful marketer that we need to be mindful of in order to be better marketers.
I'd be happy to. So, and by the way, if people are interested in learning more, they can go to themindfulmarketer.com and download some complimentary videos. We even have a 2-minute mindful marketer quiz at lisanirell.com. So you can take a quiz and see, where is my marketing being done with intention and in a mindful way, and where might I be getting tripped up? So the one area that I would suggest to people to look at, and we talk about this in detail in the book, is where can I be more focused? Are there any areas in my business or in my daily life habits where I'm really not present to my customers or my team or my family? And one place to look would be my multitasking habits. We have found through research that there is somewhere between 1.5 and 2% of the total population who can actually be effective at multitasking. So unless you're in that 1.5 to 2%, you're really undermining your productivity and your focus. I know, like, if someone interrupts me, if my husband, we have offices back to back, if he comes in and interrupts me, which seldom happens, and asks me a question and I'm deep in thought and I'm writing something for a client, it can take me 15 or 20 minutes to get back to where I was. So ask yourself, where am I letting myself multitask? And what would happen if I stopped doing that? So I would look at that first. And how am I conducting meetings with clients? Am I really listening to them, or am I worrying, or am I in one of two modes, talking or waiting to talk? Am I really connecting with them in the present moment? Am I looking at, their body language and listening to the tonality of their voice, the color of their skin? There are a whole bunch of things and clues you can pick up when you're really present and you turn off your digital device. So multitasking is one of the worst ones. And the other is present moment language. Alan Weiss is a prolific writer and consultant. And he says, language controls discussion, discussion controls relationships, and relationships control the business. So mindful language is an area we work on a lot with our clients, where we say, are you falling prey to what's happening in Western society right now around the language that we're using when we're communicating with people? I think it's time that we put on the shelf our excessive use of military and male sports metaphors when we're talking in sales and marketing. If I hear one more football metaphor, I'm gonna douse them with water. So there are so many other illustrative metaphors we can use in our language. So saying we're gonna kill the competition, I mean, really? Or we have a targeted campaign for this audience, or rifle shot approach. We can do better than that, Phil. So think about, what kind of intentional language are you using? And how can I replace some of these old, tired metaphors with some that are a bit more fun and interesting, especially if you market to women. And last time I checked, we're 51% of the population. So, not too many women I know are rabid football fans or baseball fans. So think about that. Are those helpful?
Those are really helpful. So, yep. So stopping with the multitasking and putting away the technology, I think, is really good. And more mindful language, which is something that we don't hear a lot. I mean, I think at least I've come to accept that. I mean, I enjoy football as much as the next person, and I was in the military for 4 years, so I get those. But even still, I mean, I have a friend of mine who reminds me that boot camp is for the military, not for a training course.
Oh, please. Yeah, that word is used a lot, isn't it? Sales boot camp, marketing boot camp, digital marketing boot camp. Yeah. Yeah, well, I'm launching one of those very soon. So I think that's interesting that, after that launches and after that goes, definitely having the more mindfulness. And so, but what do we replace that with? I mean, can you give me an example of where we would replace, boot camp with something more, more inclusive, more mindful? So is it a seminar? Is it a single seminar, or is it a series of programs?
It's a series of programs.
Well, I would start with, what are the 2 or 3 excellent outcomes you want your clients or prospects to achieve?
Okay, so start with the outcomes and include those, or because obviously, if we're doing a sales, let's say we're doing a sales boot camp, right? The whole goal is to be focused on, drive more leads, close more business, right? That's the only reason that salespeople do training. They don't typically train for other reasons, even though there are other reasons, right? But we know that's
Right.
the two big ones.
Well, again, being the provocateur I am, I think we train animals and we educate people. So how do you want their lives to be better as a result? I know in the limited time we have together, we probably can't address this. So my question would be, focus on the outcomes, focus on I have a 7-minute rule. This might be helpful to you or to other people who are designing educational programs or seminars, workshops. Think about it through this lens. Turn on your phone and turn the timer on for 7 minutes. Pull out a notepad, get a pen. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, pen and paper still work. And just start writing for 7 minutes all the possible names of the seminar you can come up with. We call this free writing. And this is what many famous authors do to trigger ideas for their book, for their chapters, for their plots. I learned this from a colleague, and there are many ways you can do free writing, but the simplest way is really turn on your timer for 7 minutes. Start writing and do not edit. Do not self-edit. Just keep going and see what potential headlines or titles you could come up with. Again, monkey mind, the 5-year-old brain will kick in and sit and make you start writing things like, this is stupid, I'm scared, I don't like it, you can't make me. You'll get all of that and just write it anyway and keep going. You'll power through it. You'll come up with the answer, Phil.
That's awesome. Awesome. So take the 7-minute rule. Be more mindful about what you do. That's great. So Lisa is at Lisa Nirell. That's NIRELL.com and themindfulmarketer.com. She's got tons of resources. But Lisa, you get the last word. Any last bit of advice as we close down today?
One of my favorite poets. So as people look at how they design their lives, how they design their marketing strategies, think of the wisdom of the 12th century poet Rumi. I always love what he said. He said, yesterday I was clever, so I wanted to change the world. Today I'm wise, so I'm changing myself.
Wow. That's a great, great point. Thank you so much, Lisa. You were a gem and very loquacious, as well as, short and to the point.
And we had fun.
Absolutely, we did. Thank you very much, Lisa. Good stuff.